Hey film fans, welcome to CinePro, your ultimate hub for all movie recaps. From heartwarming classics to the latest blockbusters. Our movie today begins at an airport in America. We see Brandon waking up startled in the caravan after having a nightmare. We learn that in the nightmare he saw the woman drowning, looking at him sadly from under the water. At this moment, the man felt he might be late for work, so he got up quickly to get ready for a new work day. At the same time, there was a guy named Jad, who was standing waiting for his fiancée with his friend Kyle, because they were traveling on a trip to a resort in its outskirts. When Ava, his fiancée, arrived, she said her bodyguard Brandon would be coming with her because her father wouldn't allow her to travel alone so far away. Of course, Jad knew his fiancée's father was an important man and that she was the governor's daughter. He told her she didn't need a bodyguard just to go to a tourist resort. At that moment, Ava got a call from her father. At the same time, Kyle, Brandon's friend, called him to tease him, asking why he was so focused. Brandon replied that anything could happen and there might be danger. Right after, the bodyguard started describing what every person around the airport looked like, which made Jad admire his seriousness and professionalism. A few minutes later, the group moved to board the plane. One of the staff there recognized Ava, telling her that her voice would soon reach the governor, since the elections were near. On the other side of the airport, we see Mardo and Hank collecting their things from the luggage belt, accompanied by their little granddaughter Rosa, who was carrying her beloved teddy bear in her bag. Before going down the stairs, the old lady said she would meet the rest of her family at the boarding gates, but she needed to do something first, so the girl continued walking towards the plane with her grandfather, who was telling her many stories about his life as a soldier. While they were talking, Rosa dropped her teddy bear without noticing, because she was busy talking to her grandfather. After a while, Jad and Kyle went towards the plane next to Ava, who was very upset with her friends and their questions about her studies and work. As she walked, Ava saw the teddy bear lying on the ground but didn't care, and then her coffee spilled on her and dirtied her jacket. Ava got very upset and yelled at her. Rosa apologized and then ran back to her grandfather. Ava felt guilty for yelling at the girl, so she decided to get her teddy bear and return it to her. When Rosa got her beloved toy back, she was very, very happy. A few hours later, everyone boarded the plane for the trip to begin. At that time, one of the flight attendants, Daniello, said nice things to Rosa about her teddy bear, telling her it would go on a great adventure with her. Afterwards, Brandon saw Ava heading towards the economy class, so he warned her that their tickets weren't for that section, but she said the plane wasn't full and they could sit anywhere. So the man decided to let her sit next to Jad. When Kyle saw him going back and forth after Ava, he started teasing him, saying he was acting like a nanny. Brandon got annoyed and upset by Kyle's words, but stayed quiet and sat in his seat. As the plane began to take off, the flight attendants started giving safety instructions, and Kyle kept making fun of Daniello several times as he explained how to use the equipment. Kyle wanted to play a prank and scare his friend, telling her the plane had lots of technical problems, which was why there weren't many passengers on this flight. But Jad replied that the plane was emptier because of the time they were traveling, and explained that airports would be busier in a few hours. At that moment, the plane hit some light turbulence, and Rosa sat eating the sweets she got from her grandfather. At that moment, Mardo noticed there were some birds, and it looked like one hit an engine. Because of that, the passengers felt a slight jolt for a few seconds, but the pilots managed to keep control of the plane. Daniello said everything was under control, which calmed Ava a little. Right after, Rosa looked out the window and got scared and screamed when she saw the engine was on fire. The pilots realized the plane was about to collapse and would crash soon, so they ordered the passengers to fasten their seatbelts and asked the crew to go to the cabin to receive emergency instructions. Suddenly, a part of the engine flew toward the plane's body, destroyed the walls, and made a big hole in the plane. Because of the pressure difference, many people were thrown from their seats, and the plane started breaking apart in the air. Amid the chaos, everyone tried to hold on to anything to save themselves, but unfortunately, nothing worked, and most of the passengers were thrown out of the plane and all died. A few seconds later, the plane hit the surface of the ocean, and because of the crash, many people died instantly, including Brandon, who we learn was hit in the chest by a piece of debris. At the same time, all the plane seats crashed into each other, finishing off the remaining survivors who hadn't been injured yet, killing them as well. After the crash, Ava looked around and was shocked to see that Kyle's arm had been severed in the accident. Right after, the plane started sinking deeper and deeper, and the three realized they were now trapped hundreds of meters underwater, with mountains surrounding them on all sides beneath the water. While they were trying to recover from the shock, the survivors were surprised by Daniello, who had been hiding in the crew cabin. At that moment, they heard noises coming from the water, and Ava discovered that Brandon had survived and was still alive. Not only that, he had also saved Rosa and Mardo. Quickly, Brandon removed the piece of metal stuck in his body, and Daniello used his first aid experience to help revive the old lady. After that, Rosa realized her grandfather wasn't with them and started asking about him. But Brandon replied that the old man had died in the accident, and this news broke the girl's heart deeply. After that, Brandon began explaining that everyone needed to stay calm to have any chance of survival, and asked Daniello to check the area behind the pilots to make sure it wouldn't break apart. He also told them they were in an air bubble and that the plane seemed to be wedged securely in the rocks, so they would have some time, but it would be temporary until they came up with a plan to escape from this place. Daniello said the pilots had contacted the airport before the crash, and that they must have already started searching for survivors, but the problem was that the oxygen was running out. When the attendant checked the cabin tanks, he discovered they were completely empty because his colleague hadn't made the necessary change. Despite this, Mardo told them that one of the passengers had an oxygen tank connected to his body, so Brandon decided to go look for the tank. The old lady, embarrassed, asked him to bring her died husband's cap. Before leaving, Brandon said he would treat Kyle's injury when he returned. After that, Brandon dived into the flooded corridors of the plane, and after getting the things, he prepared to return to the group, not realizing he was being watched by a very large shark. Before he could do anything, the shark suddenly attacked him and bit him very hard. Seconds later, Ava saw her bodyguard emerging from the water, but after he handed them the things, Brandon told Ava that she had to continue her survival on her own from now on. When Ava heard that, she realized that her friend had been seriously injured. At that moment, the shark dragged him all the way down. Everyone present was terrified. The group felt they would be in danger if they stayed there any longer. So they gathered in the crew cabin, and Mard said that all they could do now was wait for rescue. The old lady asked Danilo to bring the first aid kit so she could treat the major fracture in Kyle's arm, and quickly Ava brought magazines she had been reading on the plane to wrap Kyle's arm. After the old lady put the boy's bone back in place, she bandaged the wound. At that time, when the governor learned of the accident that happened to his daughter, he ordered many military units to search for the missing plane, but so far no team had been able to find it. In the cabin, the survivors were waiting for rescue. Danilo asked Mard how she had so much experience in first aid. The lady replied that she had spent many years working as a military nurse in the war. During that time, she had met her husband, Hank. Suddenly, the group noticed that the water started to change color to red. That's how they realized the sharks were eating the bodies of all the victims. Ava tried to reassure Rosa so she wouldn't be scared and told her that surely there were many helicopters searching for them now, and that they would be able to go home very soon. At the same time, the soldiers continued their search for the missing plane, and because they hadn't found anything yet, the center asked them to stay in the area until they had any evidence of the plane's location. Afterwards, Ava started to analyze the water level and told them they had about 4 hours before they would be completely submerged. But when they heard noises coming from the plane's fuselage, Jade said they would die much sooner than that and explained that this plane had very thin aluminum walls, so they wouldn't last as long as a submarine, which uses thick iron walls to withstand pressure. While they were thinking about what to do, the plane started to slide again, moving hundreds of meters in the ocean, then stopped above a huge slope. Despite that, the group managed to stay hidden inside the cabin, not realizing they were only a few meters away from falling into a very deep sea trench. After Ava analyzed the area around the plane, she said they had to try to swim to the exit hatch, especially since they were sinking more and more. Jade was surprised and told them they were in a place full of hungry sharks, but Ava replied that they had to use anything to distract them. When Rosa heard that, she told them that sharks hate bubbles, but Kyle yelled at her and said they couldn't listen to a child in a situation like this. Then, Kyle suddenly remembered there were 2 divers on this plane, which made him recall they must have loaded diving equipment at the airport. But Danilo told them that even if they could reach the luggage compartment from an opening inside the cabin, the oxygen tanks would probably be empty and they wouldn't be able to bring them into the plane. To have any way to get out, Ava told them they would need to use wetsuits and masks. But Jade said it wouldn't be difficult. They had a swimming goggle in one of the luggage boxes, but they were very upset when they accidentally broke the goggles. At the same time, one of the military helicopters found some of the plane wreckage, and when they realized there were no survivors who had made it to the surface, they notified the military center. The captain felt they didn't have much time before the fuel ran out, so he said they had to search the area for 15 more minutes and gather information as quickly as possible. Immediately, the team started to scout the area, sending 2 divers to look for the missing plane. Within seconds, the soldiers were able to find the sunken plane, and when they saw the lights were on, they tried to get closer to look for any survivors. Inside the cabin, Rosa saw the divers approaching, and everyone was happy that the authorities had finally found them. Quickly, the soldier asked his partner to go toward the plane's hatch, but before the man could warn his colleague that the survivors had seen a shark approaching from behind, the group tried to warn the diver, but it was useless. After a few seconds, the shark suddenly attacked and ate him easily. Because of that delay, the pilots felt their fuel was running low, and decided to notify the military base to send more helicopters to the area so they could return to base immediately. At that moment, Ava thought the second diver's body might be near the entrance, so she asked Jade to go with her to the plane's hatch so they could get the oxygen tank with the man's body. After she went out and saw the corridor, she said she saw the tank floating, but at that moment Jade slipped and fell into the water. Before he could return to the group, the fierce shark surprised Jade, bit his leg, and he came back terrified. Quickly, Ava and Danilo pulled him in, but as soon as they got him into the cabin, they discovered Jade's leg had been severed by the shark. To treat Jade's wounds, Mard asked Rosa to sit on the other side of the curtain and not to come near the water at all. Immediately, Danilo got a belt from one of the cabin's boxes, and the old lady put a tourniquet on Jade's leg, who told her he couldn't feel his leg. When Mard heard him say that, she decided to tell him the truth, that his leg had been amputated below the knee. That news broke him completely because his dream of competing in races was over. Now, after things got even harder for them, Ava asked Danilo to open the luggage box, and after she took one of the flares, she decided to go look for the diver's bag. But what happened next was that she got injured by the sunken plane's luggage compartment, and of course she didn't realize she wasn't alone in that place. Despite that, Ava was able to find the diver's bag easily, but she was badly startled by an octopus hiding behind the bag. After that, she returned safely to the group, but when they realized the equipment would only be enough for 4 people, Kyle said they wouldn't be able to take Jade with them because his condition had gotten much worse. At that time, Ava was devastated and begged Jade to try to hold on a little longer so that after they got out of there, they could still travel together to Alaska. But Jade told her that wasn't going to happen. While they were talking, the group noticed something swimming around the cabin, which made everyone come closer to the window. Then Mard realized that Ava's fiancé had died and decided to tell her, apologizing that they couldn't save him. When Ava heard the news, she collapsed and tried to bring her fiancé back to life, but there was no use at all, and Danilo tried to comfort her. At that moment, Ava felt she had lost everyone she loved in her life and started crying, saying she had never had to deal with situations like this before. At that moment, the plane started to slide again, and the cockpit separated from the rest of the fuselage, and because of that, Ava noticed that the water level was rising faster and faster. She said they had to leave that place immediately. So the survivors planned to use life jackets to make bubbles around themselves, so they could scare away the sharks and escape from the place immediately. The survivors planned to use the life jackets to make bubbles around them, so they could scare the sharks and escape. Kyle was very frustrated and said this plan wouldn't work. He told them that when he was young, he used to swim with his father, but one day he had an accident at the bottom of the swimming pool. Because he didn't know how to get back to the surface, he held his breath and waited for his father to come save him. But at that moment, he realized his father wasn't even trying to save him. After that, Kyle barely made it back to the surface, even after holding his breath for more than 2 minutes. When Ava heard this, she said that amount of time would be more than enough for them to leave the place. At that point, Kyle decided to trust his friend. They were preparing themselves, but the cabin started to collapse, and the cockpit was becoming more and more separated from the rest of the plane. After everyone was ready, Mard said she didn't need a wetsuit because she was grown up and participated in swimming competitions. Right after that, Ava said goodbye to her fiancé, and the group of survivors got ready to leave the plane. At that moment, the cockpit fell toward the bottom. When Ava realized the rest of the plane was also about to fall, she started giving instructions on what they needed to do. She explained that they needed to stay calm while escaping because they only had 2 oxygen tanks, and that they would leave one for Rosa and the other one would be shared among the adults. When Mard realized her granddaughter was scared, she tried to comfort her and told her that her grandfather's spirit would protect her no matter what, and that they would reach the surface safely. While they were planning, the old woman decided to talk to Ava and asked her to protect Rosa no matter what happened, because she knew she would slow the group down if she tried to stay with them. She decided to sacrifice herself so they could live. Even though Ava didn't want to agree to this, in the end, she accepted. Before her granddaughter left, Mard asked her to stay calm and said that Ava and her teddy bear would stay with her the whole time. When Ava realized the cabin was about to break apart, she said it was time to leave and told her that everyone loved her very much. Halfway through, Kyle had a moment of despair and tried to return to the air bubble. Because of that, the sharks were able to find and attack him, and he was killed quickly. There was nothing anyone could do. Danilo continued his escape and told Ava what happened to Kyle. Even though she was devastated, she decided to continue with the plan. After they took the tanks, they got ready to leave. Without wasting time, Danilo waited outside with Rosa. After letting Ava breathe from the tank one last time, the two of them pulled the life jacket cords, which made them start rising up. But before Ava could escape, she was surprised by one of the sharks. But instead of attacking her, the shark went toward Kyle's body. When Ava realized there were more sharks approaching, she tried to swim toward the opening. At that moment, the plane started to fall, which pulled her back. She tried to swim as fast as she could and managed to get out of the plane at the last second, avoiding one of the wings. Because of the current caused by the plane, Ava's jacket couldn't make her float quickly, and she lost consciousness after her oxygen ran out. Nevertheless, she reached the surface after a few seconds, which made her wake up immediately. After that, Ava found the teddy bear floating in the water. When she realized Rosa and Daniela were missing, she was shocked and very upset. At that moment, a fleet of helicopters appeared in the sky and threw down a metal rope to rescue her. She relaxed when she found out the other two had already been saved by the soldiers. When Rosa realized her grandmother hadn't made it out, she started crying and hugged Ava, who told her she found her teddy bear. When the girl heard that, she remembered her grandfather had said he always wanted a teddy bear like that if he ever got into trouble, so she decided to throw the toy back into the ocean. In the end, the survivors waited until they were taken back to the city. They were very relieved to still be alive after everything that happened to them. And that's where today's movie events end. Stay tuned for more videos and news summaries.